Tēnā koutou katoa ko tainui waka, ngai tai te iwi, tōrere nui arua te marae, ko au ko Ramona. Good morning, my name is Ramona. I'm the portfolio lead for distinct value Indigenous wood products here at Scion. Good morning everyone. As I introduced myself, I descend from the tribes of the Eastern Bay of Plenty, and my father's from the United Kingdom. My whānau own and manage 1,000 hectares of pine forest and 10 times that of virgin native bush. At Scion, I lead a portfolio entitled Distinct Value Indigenous Wood Products. This presentation is a summary of the Tōtara industry pilot. I started out as a special advisor to the Tōtara industry pilot, and in my capacity as portfolio lead, I am now supporting the pre-commercialisation phase of an industry. Ernest Morton was supposed to co-present with me. He lives in Moirewa in Northland. Unfortunately, due to lockdown, he couldn't be here to record alongside me. Ernest is the chair of Taitokoro Māori Forests Incorporated, which is a collective of over 20 Māori pine forest trusts that control 38,000 hectares of pine and at least that in native species. Ernest will join the discussion from his place in Northland during the Q&A session. So, why Tōtara? In short, Tōtara has been considered for many years a strong commercial Indigenous wood resource. If you drive through Northland, you'll see Tōtara on the hills, in the valleys and on the flats. It springs up in virgin soils, and when established on modified land, its preference is a sunny, dry aspect. Its umbrella-shaped canopy dominates the landscape in that region, yet only a few farmers have braved it as a resource. As a conifer, Tōtara grows at a rate similar to Rimu, kahikatea, according to Dr. David Bergen. That is around 26 centimetres in height per annum, 6 millimetres in diameter for the first 50 years. Tāne's Tree Trust and New Zealand Farm Foresters have been working on creating value from Tōtara and other Indigenous species for many years. With this species, an obvious pathway for value is timber. The softwood timber is naturally durable and it is beautiful. The Tōtara industry pilot, or TIP for short, is a study into the viability of an industry in Northland that makes use of on-farm Tōtara timber resource and permitting under sustainable forestry management. This industry is not just about timber production. It is about encouraging an appropriate and sustainable land use for all the many environmental, economic, social and cultural benefits that can come along with that. The scope of this project did not include plantation Tōtara, the value of ecosystem services, or other streams such as high-value chemicals, although these opportunities were discussed during the study. The project was a collaboration between 5 project partners shown on the screen there. And pictured from left to right, Pita Tipene from Taitokoro Māori Forestry Incorporated, Elizabeth Dunningham, Scion, myself, Peter Berg from Tāne's Tree Trust, Mark Hollis from MPI, Paul Quinlan, Tāne's Tree Trust, Julian Elder from Scion, and Dr. David Wilson from Northland Inc. From here on, I'll refer to the Tōtara industry pilot as TIP. TIP was the second stage in what has become a 3-step initiative. The first stage, known as the Tōtara Industry Project, took place over the course of 2014 and continued on into 2018. It could be best described as early Tōtara industry and wood product work, where Scion, in collaboration with the Northland Tōtara Working Group, led by Paul Quinlan of Tāne's Tree Trust, carried out some early stage engagement with players in Northland to understand the interest in a Tōtara industry. This wood was tested thermally modified Tōtara, which produced some drying schedules across various cycles and sequences, and also Tōtara durability testing. The partners in the study reflect these early stage discussions. As the study progressed, it was set up under a steering group, and an operations team carried out the on-ground activities. In 2008, the relationship agreement was signed by the partners, and the vision strongly Northland focused, he Tōtara tūturu, he iwi tūtonu, sturdy Tōtara, sustainable communities. This was drafted by the steering group to express three main ideals for the future. Firstly, that Tōtara would be viewed as Māori once viewed it. Secondly, that Tōtara would be actively managed as a commercial and ecological resource. And thirdly, that plantations of Tōtara would be encouraged under the value of kaitiakitanga for future generations. This vision became the foundation for a successful study involving these partners with diverse interests and agendas. What you see on the screen before you is the kaupapa. Given the strong desire for Māori leadership expressed in the vision, Taitokoro Māori Forest Inc. played a big part in the development of steering group culture. Pita Tipene and Rawson Wright were members of the steering group. You can see here the fusion and harmony of the two worlds in the words, the old and the new, the contemporary and the traditional, the commercial and the environmental. Kei te tohunga te whakairo, literally translated, means from the specialist comes the thought. Figuratively though, its meaning expands to the carver brings the wood to life, the wood brings the carver to life. And in this juxtaposition, or this dual view, the whakatauki becomes the strategic intent of the study and the future industry. Okay, here's the timeline. You can see here why we refer to TIP as the second stage in a three-stage initiative. Although it officially began in 2018, it included some preliminary work and a pre-pilot harvest carried out by Scion of 40 cubic metres of standing volume in 2017, a standing harvest volume of 95 cubic metres in 2018, and a final of 200 cubic metres in 2019. It also includes the handover to TMFI this year. This is the incredible team of specialists that were involved in the study. You can see Doug Gaunt and Jamie Agnew in the picture there. Okay, the study objectives. The main thrust of the study was at de-risking the opportunity for an industry to provide a platform. As stated previously, we had sufficient data before the study to conclude that a Northland industry was viable. What we didn't know was how viable and how all the pieces would come together to make it viable. In its entirety, TIP was 2 years from start to finish and cost $1 million, under the leadership of Peter Berg as chair and Elizabeth Dunningham as project manager. Despite its complexity as a project, it delivered on time, on budget, and hit its milestones and the desired outputs. What you see on the screen here is a summary of the de-risked supply chain. During the study, we tested the supply chain. In essence, the Tōtara industry that we worked on was A, naturally generating resource, B, processed by existing pine industry infrastructure that C, had some special challenges which required innovation. Permitting and harvesting are different in native species. Native species also require a different kind of handling and are sold into markets that aren't as sophisticated and as set up as pine. Prior to the study, there was also perceived to be a significant social licence challenge. The harvesting of trees took place on farmland under sustainable forest management permits. The permits took some time to come through from the council, and this was a learning for us. and this pushed the schedule out into winter, which is, as you can understand, not ideal, and the 2 harvests took place in May. The authorities were learning alongside us during this process. A point to note is that 40% of the permits in the Northland region for this period came from this study. As expressed in the strategic intent, having respect for Māori custom was a strong component, and tikanga was applied. This, in the picture to the left, is Ngāti Hine Kaumātua Edward Beattie offering karakia prior to the first harvest. Okay, timber processing during the processing and evaluation phase proved to be inefficient in the first harvest. It took some time to find a mill that was set up and had schedules that could accommodate the processing. So the logs were initially transported to Rotorua Toihohomai training mill. By the time the second harvest came around, a mill had been identified, and the logs were processed at North Pine. We worked with 3 timber merchants during the study: BBS Timbers, JSC Timbers and Abodo. We arrived at a rough sawn value per cubic metre averaging at $3,200 per cubic metre. Some gaps were also identified. We had several opportunities to build the community into the study also. Numerous operators during the course of the project from Northland expressed a different emotion when working with native species. We also engaged in 10 stakeholder meetings to test the perspectives and opinions of Northlanders in a Tōtara industry, from Forest and Bird to Tane's Tree Trust, New Zealand Farm Foresters, Māori and councils. Many expressed a desire to see Tōtara growing. Some questioned whether adequate leadership from Māori was being given, and a strong desire for this to be so in the future. Some wanted to wānanga on further aspects of this. During the project, several timber purchases and donations were given to the Handavasa Centre in Kawakawa, the church floor of the Samuel Marsden Church in Matauri Bay, and the laminated timber waka taniwha in the Auckland Park Hyatt Hotel in the Viaduct District in downtown Auckland. I would go so far as to say the study brought the community alive. Okay, so on the screen are the study findings. There were reports and collateral produced from the study which can be found on the website. I don't have time to go into the findings in any great detail. You can see here several pieces of output. One was a website, which you can see on the top left. Second was a newsletter. Third were several publications, and the fourth was the final report. We also had several news articles, one being a love story. Okay, post the TIP study. Since the study ended in September 2020, it was recognised in the Primary Industries Awards, incidentally the only forestry entrant and recognised project. At the end of the study, the TIP steering group also decided to hand over the IP and collateral from the study to the Māori partner, Taitokoro Māori Forests Inc. And the partners continue to support TMFI into the pre-commercialisation stage, where wānanga and further research will be conducted to conclude the findings. Business modelling, value chain optimisation, completing the final resource stocktake and a value chain strategy are also work to be concluded. TMFI is excited about the prospect of the next stage and how we can enable a Māori-led forestry industry. As you can see here, Ernest's statement refers to the benefits and the distributions that come through in several ways, both socially, culturally, environmentally and also economic. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.